Okay, here in this DeBacco University video, we're going to be looking at the crime scene search methods. We have a couple pictured here to give you a general idea of the pattern you should be going through, but we're going to look at this in a little bit more detail. So first off, when conducting a search, the whole point of conducting the search is for evidence. This must be thorough and systematic. You do not want to make assumptions. You want to consider any pertinent evidence and do not overlook little details, because failure to do so can lead to accusations of negligence or covering up evidence. So we don't want to if we look up here, we don't want to assume there's just 3, because if we look on kind of the other side over here, it looks like there's 4. We want to be impartial, but also thorough, systematic, and detail-oriented. Now, field evidence technicians are the person responsible for conducting the evidence search. They're mainly looking for fingerprints, footprints, tool marks, hairs, fibers, and also possible trace evidence carriers as well. This should also be photographed in the crime scene, documented, because this is a really important part, and especially depending on the scene. This searching for evidence is a critical part for any scene. Now, before the search can even begin, before we even get to that stage of looking for that evidence, we want to ensure this scene is controlled. It also includes briefing all searchers involved, establish the speed and areas of responsibility so everyone kind of has a game plan going in, or hopefully a limited number of people, but so even those that are in there, so no one interferes with anyone else's area in their searching. You want to determine a starting point. You want to establish a command post. You want to maintain communication between all people involved. Just to ensure if anything comes up that everyone is aware. Want to rotate people through areas to ensure more than one person looks at each area to reduce the chance that a detail is missed. Everyone's going to probably miss some little detail. We don't want to have a ton of people going in there, but having someone go through and do a second sweep of an area is definitely well advised. Now, these search patterns, so exactly how you're going to search a room, well, there's something called a spiral search method, and this starts at an outer point and gradually moves toward the center. Or it could start at an inner point and move outward from that center, as we kind of see the images here. So depending on the room, depending on the area, depending on the scene, may influence what type of search method you use, but this is one example, and this is called a spiral search here. Now, moving on from a spiral search, we also have a grid method. So the grid method scene is divided into grid, and each grid is segmented in its search, just as the name implies. You have this kind of very boxy-like look, and you're searching and focusing on those different boxes within that overall grid. Then we get to a line search, which is crime scene divided into strips, and each strip is searched. Again, this could be based on limiting factors, but this is just another search pattern that can be used, a line or parallel search here. Then we get into what we call a zone search, and this is a quadrant or zone search. Kind of has similar properties to the grid method, but in this case, the scene is divided into quadrants, and each quadrant is searched, so it's a little bit broader based here. This is, again, where important documenting where north is involved to know where the zones are actually located in a room and what evidence might be found in those areas, or how that room might be set up can influence whether this one is selected. Those search pattern selections, so as I said, those are the general overview, but how we actually go about selecting or determining which one we're going to use is important. And that can come down to the size, type of location of the area. Is it an indoor location or is it an outdoor location? How big is it if it's an indoor compared to an outdoor? There are a lot of trees in the outdoors, an open park, things to consider. Also, the personnel and the equipment. How many people do you have? What equipment is needed and what do you have access to? We all like to have the ideal amount, but a lot of times we're limited and restricted, so that's going to influence what search we may select. The type of crime that was committed, if we can establish that or have an idea of that early on, this can impact the type of evidence that's going to be collected, and that can also influence what pattern you choose so you can be most effective. Now, evidence from the victim themselves. Well, this may be collected by a medical examiner. Evidence often includes from the actual victim would be fiber from their clothing, hair from their head and pubic areas, blood, hand swabs for gunpowder if that was suspected to be part of the crime, and also photographs. So this is a lot of information just from the victim, never mind the surrounding area as well. So just keep these in mind when we're kind of going through and establish and search a crime scene to be effective and efficient, because it is only a one-time shot at getting that evidence undisturbed.
What are grid and spiral search patterns in forensic evidence? Imagine trying to find a tiny piece of evidence in a large room. You need a smart plan to make sure nothing gets missed. That's where search patterns come into play. In forensic investigations, two common methods are grid and spiral searches. These are systematic ways to examine a scene thoroughly and efficiently. A grid search pattern involves two investigators working together. They start by walking side by side in parallel lines across the area. Once they finish one pass, they turn and go back in lines perpendicular to the first set. This crisscross movement covers the entire scene twice, making it very thorough. It's especially useful in indoor or confined spaces where small evidence like fibers or shell casings might hide. Because two people coordinate, they can cover more ground without missing spots. On the other hand, the spiral search pattern is usually done by a single investigator. They begin at a central point or at the scene's edge and move outward in a continuous circular motion. Alternatively, they might start at the outer boundary and spiral inward. This method is great when the evidence is suspected to be concentrated around a specific point. It's often used in smaller spaces or in water scenes where evidence might be floating or clustered. Spiral searches help avoid dead ends because the investigator keeps moving in one smooth motion, ensuring every part of the scene gets checked. Choosing between these two depends on the scene's size, layout, and what kind of evidence is expected. Grid searches are best when detail is critical and multiple investigators are available. Spiral searches work well for quick, focused searches, especially when working alone or when evidence is likely near a specific spot. Both patterns are part of a larger set of search techniques designed to find evidence efficiently. Using them correctly helps prevent missing important clues, which is key in solving crimes and building strong cases. Proper evidence collection is the backbone of forensic science and investigation work. These methods make sure every inch of a scene is examined carefully, giving investigators the best chance to find what they need.